Greetings, brothers and sisters. So I've got all these things up on my toolbar, so I was either gonna get rid of them because they were building, or I was just gonna make a video today. So I think it's time for me to go back to work. Um, we'll start here with Little Nas X, who is this is a Saturday Night Live sketch, and this is a Saturday Night Live character based on Little Nas X on a show where he's being interviewed by Britney Spears. This is their new. They've done this a couple times for their cold open to have Britney interview somebody controversial, and in a surprise to no one, there are no funny jokes. Like, it's not funny at all. And Lil Nas X comes out wearing what appears to be a Baphomet pentagram. And, I don't know if he actually wears those in real life, but he's wearing it here. This SNL character of him, a representation of him, is wearing a Baphomet pentagram in this sketch.
Because they're closed-minded idiots.
And, what would you say to the religious folks who were mad that you gave Satan a lap dance?
I would say, that wasn't the real Satan, right?
That wasn't the real Satan. Like, that's your defense? This is Saturday Night Live? That wasn't the real Satan? Well, there's so much to unpack here. Like, this is something where, with the whole Me Too movement and the cancel culture, like, so much of the cancel culture is based in things that people do in a performance level type of situation. That means we can make any type of movie about any sort of protected group of people and say that wasn't real. Like, that's fictitious. It's not the real Satan. Even though your belief system is being mocked in the worst possible way, you shouldn't be offended because it isn't real, isn't the real Satan. It's just a representative of something in your belief system, which, so many people are upset about on other levels, right? People are offended all the time now. Everyone's offended full time because their belief systems are being mocked in this sort of way, the exact same way. If it was a right-wing country singer and they were praising, say, a fake Hitler, right? Something like that. If a Trump supporter made a video where they were doing a lap dance in front of a, KKK figure, and it was considered a conservative person, would you be okay with that? It's just a ridiculous argument. It's a childlike argument. This is something that was meant to offend people. And what's offensive about it is, number one, you only did it because you have a crappy song, or the real Nas X only did it because he had a crappy song. And, this was something that he did purposefully to create controversy. They knew how people on the right were going to react. Everybody knows about the QBs. Everyone knows about the right-wing people, the religious people. Everyone knows about the Illuminati. I mean, he even said it in that interview video that this was his Illuminati moment. Everybody knows about the Illuminati and on, how the internet responds to something like this, that it was going to be, incredible buzz. And Saturday Night Live trying to minimize this, right? I mean, they're minimizing it based on them saying it isn't the real Satan. Like, you could be upset if it was a real Satan, but it's just some guy in a costume.
It was a dude in a Halloween devil costume, because the real Satan doesn't do, music videos.
Or does he? Or does he do lots of them? Again, I'm not a Christian, and I have a different understanding of Christian. I believe in Jesus and these things, right? I believe that Jesus was a, spiritual person. I have a different understanding of all these things if you watch my videos. But I talk about it like when you're playing video games and you're shooting people. Yeah, you're not actually murdering people. Like, you're playing some, I don't know if that game exists anymore, but Grand Theft Auto or whatever it was, right? Games like that where it's just gratuitous violence. You're practicing something, right? You're practicing something in a virtual world where you can get away with it. But the intentions, what's inside of you is still there. Your intention to do a lap dance on Satan is still there, right? And also your intention to exploit people's belief systems, to trigger people's belief systems, specifically Christian people and people, on the internet that believe in, truther narratives and the Illuminati, which is about half the population. Everyone knows what the Illuminati is. And you exploited it. And the other thing that's offensive about it is that you cultivated a child audience, which I covered before at NPR, He went on NPR and said that he went after kids in various ways, that he wanted a child audience. He hooked them in. He even admitted to it in a song, right? That song where he said he did a gimmick. He admits it, but he's not going to apologize. So he went in and did that, horse song, and it was kind of a song for children. He brought in Billy Ray Cyrus, all that stuff. That song was, catchy and all these things. And then he, after hooking a child audience, he ended up doing this thing. And his video now the video already has 90 million views. And this is young people mostly, and, few old people that are upset. 2 million views for like a follow-up video. The shoe video, the apology shoe video, got 6 million views. And then 2 more videos that got a total of 6 million views. So this is something where they are, milking every ounce of this thing, that he did something to upset people. And he's created controversy, which works well in the record business, which was all intentional. For a song that sucks, and no one's going to care about the song. If the song was out there with just a regular video or a lyric video, this thing no one would care, and no one would really listen to it. It would just die a painful one-hit wonder death, as would his career. But he's done something here to provoke people and take, kids down a degraded path. A time where kids are confused and, kids are disconnected from their parents and they don't get the proper training. They are being shown that Satan is cool. To be Satan, because he kills Satan and takes Satan's spot, is something to be desired. And, it is not a good message on every level.
Would you be willing to give a lap dance to God? Just to even things out?
So Saturday Night Live just made it way worse. Like, they just took something that was bad and in a non-funny way, which is their specialty, their speciality, they made it worse.
Wow! Happy Easter, everyone!
On a day that they're celebrating the resurrection of, again, Easter isn't the real day. I mean, I've talked about this before. Easter is a pagan holiday, whatever. But the day that they're celebrating this, it's a sacred day to Christians around the world. Billions. How many Christians are there? A billion? And this is a sacred day for them. I mean, think about if they did this to Muhammad. Like, when they just put Muhammad in a cartoon, I mean, this is something where there was all this controversy in France with that controversial French magazine when they did a cartoon of Muhammad, which was, that met with outrage. And they just did something to degrade God, the Christian God, right? The whole, the belief system here of a billion people. And whether you agree with it or not, it's offensive, right? When, everyone's so hypersensitive about, you got to apologize all the time for offending this group or that group or whatever it is. And you have this big group of people which pretty much represents every demographic. There are Christians of every race and culture around the world. There's Christians all over the world. And you've just offended pretty much all of them in one way or another, whether they're offended or not. In a time where people are offended for much, much less, you had Little Nas X offending people, and then Saturday Night Live making it worse.
And should I again remind people that was not the real God?
Again, that is not a defense. No one would think that that's a reasonable defense. What you are doing is taking things that are representations of the 2 iconic figures in Christianity, the devil, which represents evil, and God that represents God, right? Represents good. And you're creating a representation of them. And you have billions of people, at least a billion. How many Christians are there? 2 billion, is it? And so you have all these people, specifically here in America, where you have, the majority of people have grown up with some form of Christianity as their belief system and religion. And so these things mean something to those people. And you are purposefully mocking those things, degrading those things in a sexual way, in a perverse way to antagonize that group of people, which I thought we were all against, right? I thought this was the new, everybody's offended all the time, and there's cancel culture for people that do these types of things, but apparently it only works for certain groups of people, and that you can do anything you want to Christians. And again, I'm not a Christian. I mean, I believe in God, and I'm, sensitive to the way that people are, the culture, mainstream culture, is mocking people who believe in God, saying that we're stupid and, you should be a person of science and science is the new religion and these things. And it's open season to do whatever you want to people who believe in God, and specifically Christians in America, because they're a bunch of dumb Trump voters. They're all racist and stupid, even though there's all these various demographics of people that believe in Christianity. It's more than just white people, right? And it's not just Republicans. And there's, gay churches and things like this. So it isn't, just one demographic of Trump supporters that it's free to, and even that's not fair or cool to have open season on people just because of what they believe. I mean, that's the whole idea behind cancel culture, is that you're sensitive to other people's beliefs, especially when the person is doing this is just explaining it for monetary gain and for, this shock value, Madonna, Madam Expiration Date, and Lady Gaga stuff, Katy Perry stuff, that they're doing just to provoke that group. They're provoking these people on purpose, antagonizing them, and putting in front of kids, this guy who's targeted kids, which is even worse, and then gaslighting them, telling them they're stupid and crazy for being upset at something you did purposely to upset them, right? You're triggering them on purpose. And so for Saturday Night Live to double down and give a lap dance to God and have this fake applause behind it, right? Which isn't funny on top of it. I mean, they commit crimes against comedy every week on Saturday Night Live. And so it's just a disaster on every level. I mean, it's just, it's 2021. And then they bring in Kate McKinnon as Pepe Le Pew, because for some reason, a character that's based in being a male sort of groper, right? This is a male, misogynist that's constantly grabbing cats that have paint on them because he doesn't know, that it's not a skunk, and basically mauling it and molesting the female cat or the male cat with a skunk stripe, is now being played by a woman, which blows up the whole idea of the character. The whole idea of the character, that it's a lecherous male skunk. The male part is, imperative to the groping nature of the skunk, but they have to weave Kate McKinnon into every sketch somehow, so she's Pepe Le Pew.
Blonde wig, I make love to it for 10 to 15 minutes before LeBron James tap me on the shoulder. He said, bro, that's a basketball.
Yeah, so that sucks. Then they bring in Pete Davidson, who sucked at imitating Andrew Cuomo's, to suck at imitating Matt Gaetz, right?
Speaking of teens...
Oh, we don't have to speak of teens.
No, let's. So this whole story is so bizarre, so incredibly Florida, that I need to get it straight. You were dating a 17-year-old and brought her on trips across state lines.
Allegedly.
So the internet heard this and saw Pete Davidson playing this guy, and they started to point out, the internet as an entity started to point out that he dated an 18-year-old, Kaya Gerber or whatever her name is, Cindy Crawford's daughter, maybe other 18-year-olds. So the internet started to point out the hypocrisy and also his horrible imitation of Matt Gaetz. But then here's the kicker. Britney Spears, this fake Britney Spears, says this.
I don't know, Matt. I think I can spot a teen predator when I see one. After all, I was on Mickey Mouse Club.
Oh.
What are you talking about here? Are you admitting that the Disney Club and the Disney Channel is filled with predators, teen predators, and Britney was perhaps victimized by one? She had so many teen predators and child predators around her. And again, with the pedo jokes, instead of actually taking action, instead of doing some sort of passive-aggressive joke about Disney, actually taking action, because you have power in Hollywood. You have a platform on Saturday Night Live, and to expand on that instead of, this not funny joke, which is, I don't know, meant for shock value, and basically acknowledging something that most people know, that these programs, these Hollywood programs, Disney, the worst of the worst, are filled, these teen programs, these child stars, because there was a whole documentary about it, right? There was a whole, Amy Berg's An Open Secret, that in Hollywood kids are subjected to pedos and pers and things like this. Are you admitting that? You mock QBs and you mock, people in the truth community, then you admit something like this in a so-called joke. You can only make that joke. Again, it's not funny. It's not a real joke, but you can only make that joke unless there's some truth in it. You can't, come in with this just because some people believe it. You're saying that Britney Spears was around a lot of teen predators on the set of Mickey Mouse Club. But then Saturday Night Live actually gets something right. I mean, it's, hard to believe.
Biggest part of this story to me, a sitting congressman is being accused of child trafficking, and the QAnon people are suddenly like, nah, I need more evidence.
And that's completely correct. Because this guy came out for something, I don't know what it was, and people were celebrating him because he was sort of a, whatever it is. He was a right-wing truther to some extent. I don't know what he was doing. I said, this guy's really creepy. Now, I don't know if he did these things they're accusing him of. It seems like was completely guilty with that Tucker Carlson interview. But this is not a good person. Just because he agrees with you, and this is what I've been saying over and over, and it goes for people on the left. Just because people agree with your beliefs doesn't mean they're a good person, and you should give them a pass or celebrate them and look up to them and idolize them. This is the same thing with Trump and then any of these, politicians on the left. They don't believe what they're saying. Like, many of them have a totally different belief system than they present in their brand. Like Trump's brand is there's Democrats that know that they have to say a certain thing to appeal to their base, but they might be completely different people. They might not believe anything that they're saying because they're actors and they're just saying what people, what their group wants them to say, what the people that is their fan base want them to say. And so, or, it's something that they've been told to say by the powers that be. So you should never believe that they believe what you believe, right? You should never believe that they believe what you believe. This guy does not believe what you believe. And you have all these Trump supporters who, and QBs who are so-called for the children and against these predators, but they're so locked into the idea that only Democrats are evil, and they, dismiss Trump's association with Jeffrey Epstein and all these other things, right? And with this guy who was clearly just something off about the guy. And when I first saw him, I said, who is this guy? And then I saw that he was being celebrated, just like Lynn Wood, that, these people who are obviously not good people, but they agree with your beliefs. And I could say the same thing about people on the left. I mean, it's everybody who has one of these, identification belief system paradigm people that are just looking for other people that agree with them. And when it's a celebrity or something, lots of people in the truth community are like this. Instead of looking at the people and their characters and what they really are as a human being. And this guy's he's always been weird, creepy, and just not somebody you should trust. You should be able to read people's spiritual conditions and see who they are as a person. I have some training in this in terms of the heartfulness meditation that I do. You learn to read people. You learn to see beyond their masks. And they're, the not masks in the term of COVID masks, but beyond their branding mask. Because people will pretend to be nice. You have this your whole life, right? That's why we get into issues being in relationships with people. Because deep down you knew they weren't a good person, but you deceive yourself, for whatever reason. And then there's, deeper levels of reading people. I did psychological assessments as well. So you just have to develop that skill level to kind of see through people's presentation and brands, especially now, where everybody's liars. So I saw this. This is one of the reasons I'm making this video because this is so messed up. This is like one of the most messed up things I've seen. I didn't want to let this go, like slide by. Grey's Anatomy fans flip out after 2 more old characters return to the show. And I guess the main character, I've never watched this show, like I've never seen an episode, I only have a sense of it, but there's a main woman doctor in this show, I guess is the central character. And I covered this before. She had, one of the original characters, I think, from the first couple of seasons. This thing's been on for 30 seasons or something, 20 seasons. I mean, something crazy, right? And she was in a coma, a COVID coma, which doesn't, she's a younger person, probably, 40s or 50s. I mean, not younger, but not, in the target group. Somehow she ends up, even with all the medical privileges she has as being somebody who was a doctor, ends up in a COVID coma, and she starts having these hallucinations, and one of them is her old lover returned. It was a weird interaction. But that was from last year or something. Again, I don't watch the show, but, I don't know how long she's been in a coma, but it's a long time, longer than you would normally be in one, especially since it doesn't exist in COVID. Is there anybody out there that's been in a coma, in a COVID coma for more than 3 days, and it's 6 months, right? And then this happens.
So you two are together.
She says you two are together. Now, they are disembodied souls. There's not, romance in the world of disembodied souls. They're not they're showing up on her coma beach, whatever they call it here. And she's saying, she's, implying that their souls are somehow romantically connected.
On your beach? Looks like we are.
Doctors Mark Sloan and Lexi Gray returned from beyond the grave on Thursday's Grey's Anatomy to visit.
So again, she's been in a coma for months now.
Visit Meredith in her ongoing COVID dream. And after a few spins on the merry-go-round and a little session on the swings, they got down to the root of Meredith's existential crisis.
Her ongoing COVID dream. This is supposed to be a show about medicine. Could they get something even remotely right in this, that she's on some extensive COVID hallucination for 8 months or whatever it is, and that all these past dead characters, because the show's been on for 50 years, are showing up. But the ending of this thing is absolutely priceless.
So life is pain, right? Life is pain, and somehow that's the point? No.
I forgot how irritating her voice is, this actress. She's very feminist, and I've heard her voice a few times, and I'm always oh man, people tune in for that, right? It's just
I lost you both. I lost George. I lost my parents.
She's had a lot of loss, but she's making up for it because she's able to reconnect, and because of COVID. COVID helps you with your COVID dreams. People talk about, when I had COVID, you have nightmares. I don't want to call them nightmares. I guess some of them are nightmares, but restless sleep. Sleep sucks. It's the probably worst thing about COVID, for me it was, is that when you go, usually when I was sick, I would sleep as much as I could. But I was dreading laying down and going to sleep because I could feel pretty good and be breathing well. But when I went to sleep, it got really bad. This is a year ago. And, so many people talked about having hallucinations and, brutal stuff. Not, some beach where you're having reconnection with old characters from your TV show, right? This is where people are having horrible nights, really bad nights. It's one of the hallmarks of the COVID. I mean, if you look at most people, they say the nights are brutal. It's when I would always get worse, wake up gasping for air. I mean, it sucks. And she is having this COVID coma, which I assume they put her on a ventilator, which is another nightmare. I mean, I don't know. Again, I've just seen these little clips of these hallucinations. I'd look it up, but I don't care. The show sucks, right? So, but I mean, this is, completely inaccurate. So I'm in the editing process, and I decided I'd look it up just because, kind of my job. And she's been on a ventilator for I don't know how long, maybe 7 weeks. She's been in a coma for 7 weeks, so I guess that's how long she has been on the ventilator. I mean, this is supposed to be a show about medicine, and none of this stuff is accurate. And then, this part.
Even before my parents died,
they caused you a lot of pain.
Other deceased characters.
So I saw this guy showed up on her COVID beach. I don't know about this guy. But she's had 4 people, past characters. I'm like, how many characters have died in this show? And she could only reconnect with them through her, enhanced psychic abilities and her magical COVID beach. And then it gets really bad.
Like McDreamy and George appeared in earlier episodes this season, and the appearance of 2 more beloved characters made fans very happy.
Yeah, well, I mean, you'd start to rethink in your life, right? If you're a fan of the show after 20, I mean, how long has it been on? And they're pulling this kind of crap.
I miss you both so much.
It's kind of a waste of time, too.
What?
It's kind of a waste of time to miss them. Why is that?
Why?
Because we never left you.
We never left you. And I've been talking about this because of my own, personal situation, that you want the soul to move on. You don't want to be stuck on planet Earth. You don't want it to be stuck because of your grief or whatever it is. You want the soul to move on. I covered this in other videos recently. I don't need to repeat it here. But it was interesting because this thing came up and, at this particular time.
Sometimes we're right next to you, yelling in your ear.
Some viewers even...
Sometimes they're right next to her, yelling in her ear, but, since they don't have vocal cords and a voice, she doesn't hear them. Look at this. This has got to be the best episode this season. Got me crying happy tears. Happy tears because her COVID hallucinations.
Even thought it was the best episode of the season. And while the episode was great, the advice Meredith's old friends gave her was even greater.
Some wonderful advice for her that she'll take with her after she wakes up from her COVID hallucination. She's completely going to remember this when they disconnect her from the respirator. But this is the platinum line right here.
Don't waste it, Meredith.
Waste what?
Don't waste one single minute.
Don't waste one single minute. That was the line the guy gave. This is the line the guy gave to people watching Grey's Anatomy for 20 years. I mean, you're saying don't waste a single minute to your Grey's Anatomy audience that have done nothing but waste their lives watching your crappy show. That is such a spectacularly ironic line that they're saying to their audience, don't waste one single minute. And they've, got 18 or 20 years of watching Grey's Anatomy. I didn't know whether I wanted to, I had all these tabs up. I got stuff on Joe Biden and Hunter. And I mean, it's coming in this video. And I was like, do I really want, I just don't feel, I'm just not into it, right? But I saw this and I'm like, I just want to make a video about that. I want this. I want to cover this. This iconic line where the guy says, don't waste your time to people who watch Grey's Anatomy. It's it's so classic. This is why we watch the show. We never left you. I am crying so hard. Pure happiness seeing these faces again. So they're preaching to the Grey's Anatomy audience, don't waste 1 second of your time. And, I mean, what can you say? This is so 2021. So this was something, I was about to make a video. I was halfway through a video when I got the news of, my loss. And but I wanted to come back to this because it's kind of important. This is, what's her name? Erin Burnett. And she's interviewing this Republican traitor. Now, I'm not a Republican, right? I don't care, don't vote, don't identify as anything. But this guy was somebody who ran for Republican president, and he lost to Donald J. Trump in the primary, and Donald J. Trump said some mean things to him, and so he bailed on Trump and endorsed Biden. But now he is, realizing that was maybe a mistake.
of course, a former congressman and ran for president. So, Governor, you called Biden a, quote, unifier. You endorsed his candidacy at the Democratic convention. Look, it's a bad situation in Washington, but he's made a decision that he's going to move ahead, and he's going to use reconciliation. He's going to pass $2 trillion here, $3 trillion there. That if he can do it without them, he'll do it.
So you understand the significance. This is what I was going to cover, that Joe Biden in his first 100 days is producing a budget that is already more, $1 trillion more. It's now over $4 trillion. And the tax revenue is $3 trillion. So he's already, in terms of just his new proposals, because there's all these other things. There's defense spending that is already going to be over $1.6 trillion every year. And then there's, Social Security, there's all these things, right? There's all these various, governmental budgetary considerations that are already there. They're already built in. Every president has to sign off on those things. And we're already over budget, like we're in debt. I've showed you this, right? We're over $28 trillion. This is $1 million a minute, less than probably about 40 seconds or so, for another $1 million in debt. This is the U.S. federal tax revenue, which will be, this is high already, $3.4 trillion. But that's the money we have to spend on all of these things, more printing of cash, a total U.S. debt of $85 trillion. And then there's the Trump bailouts and now the Biden bailouts. We have all these derivatives at $600 trillion. And then what it's going to cost for Social Security and Medicare. And this is the total U.S. unfunded liabilities, $21 trillion, $32 trillion, $21 trillion for Social Security, $32 trillion for Medicare. And the collective unfunded liabilities, these are things that aren't, we've promised, the government's promised to pay these things, is at $162 trillion. That's why when you go to build a house now, it's 4 times what it used to be. Everything that's real, like you're seeing your grocery bill double, it's because the dollar has been completely deflated, and they're not, they're trying to keep gold low so people don't realize this. Gold is high, but gold should be 4 times what it usually is. The dollar has completely lost its value.
Do it. Do you think it's smart of him to do that without Republicans politically?
No, I don't think it's smart at all. And by the way, the Republicans went in to see him in the White House. It was the first meeting he said he had.
Yeah.
He was at 1.9 trillion. They came in at like 600, billion. And they said, they had a good meeting. And then Biden's staff came out and said, that meeting didn't mean anything. We're not changing anything.
So this guy who endorsed Joe Biden and hated on Trump for years, he was like, a bitter little Republican dude, right? And now he is, lamenting within Biden's first months of his, he's been in office for just over 2 months. He's lamenting his, endorsement of him.
There was no serious negotiation on the part of the administration, and I'm not sure how serious the Republicans were. But the fact is, they passed a $1.9 trillion package without one single Republican. Now, if you're so great at bipartisanship, you can't get one Republican to vote with you? So now they're saying, either you get on our train or we're just going to ignore you.
Yeah.
You mad, bro? Like this traitor dude, right? And Aaron Burnett ends up kind of agreeing with him here.
Yeah.
Well, come on, Aaron. We know that doesn't make any sense. I was a governor. I had difficult times passing things. I was a congressman. I was the one that negotiated the budget agreement in '97 that got us to a balanced budget.
Yeah, you're a wonderful human being.
It's not my way or the highway. It's about being patient. It's about appealing to people's conscience. It's about bringing them along and unlocking them when they get stuck. Okay,
so
I get that.
Yeah, no, I get that. Look, I also get how people have acted on both sides in Washington, and Biden had said he wasn't going to do that. So I hear you on that. But his logic here is that he is actually doing what Republicans want. Republican voters, right? They were the COVID relief.
Yeah, we heard that, but Biden has at best polled at 54%. So he's, barely cracked half and any new president has a higher approval rating until they start doing things. And the Republicans aren't for anything Joe Biden's doing. I mean, most of them, the Trumpers at least, because of their, venom for this whole thing.
Relief bill was very popular. Of course, it had direct payments, but it was very popular among Republicans. So he's trying to basically thread this needle of Republicans like what I'm doing. It's just you Republican legislators that don't. Here's how he put it.
When you give money to people, when you give them handouts, which they're doing, of course, everyone's, oh, you're giving free money? Yeah, I'm for that. It doesn't matter who the president is. You hand out free cell phones, free checks, stimulus checks, whatever it is, COVID checks.
I would like elected Republican support. But what I know I have now is I have electoral support from Republican voters. Republican voters.
Again, I covered this in his, horrible press conference. But he has it for one issue where he's giving people free money. These voters are very happy when I give them checks. And they are for me, And the Republican leader should realize this because he now has their support, the voters. He has the voters' support.
Agree with what I'm doing. I've not been able to unite the Congress, but I've been uniting the country.
As I said, the COVID relief bill had those direct payments. Yeah. The new bill's $3 trillion. It's got a lot of things a lot of people may like, but it doesn't have direct payments. He says it's basically going to hurt elected Republicans on Election Day because Republican voters support him. Is that the right gamble politically?
We're a long way to go. But Edmund
fake laugh.
Burke said, I don't just owe you my toil, I owe you my judgment. And, as a politician, we've talked about courage. You got to use your judgment. Let me ask you the question. You think about all the money that's being spent, $1.9 trillion now, all the money that was spent when Trump was president, where, by the way, the Democrats filibustered when they didn't like the fact that Trump was trying to pass that stuff. Yep. Now we're going to have another 2, another 3, another 4 trillion. Let me ask you a question. What are your kids going to have to pay? We haven't repealed the law of gravity. They're spending money like there's no tomorrow.
Printing money like there's no tomorrow. And so, this is, the end of the dollar. The dollar is going to have no value. Eventually, you're going to realize this. You'll start realizing when you start buying stuff like materials, various types of lumber. It costs like 4 times what it used to build a house. Of course, a lot of these businesses were shut down. So there's it's in terms of the supply and demand, it's on the supply side, right? There's too much demand. And so when there's too much demand, the prices skyrocket. We saw this with toilet paper and things like this, right? Groceries now. And so, this is the end of the dollar being valuable. The inflation that's about to hit everybody in terms of, everything being so much more expensive, and they give you what they get, $1,400 that people are going to spend almost immediately, and then you're going to realize your lifestyle is no longer the same, and that the debt is so overwhelming that they have to get rid of things like Social Security, Medicare, just as a starter, and then all these other privileges, but then they're going to be building infrastructure, and I'll get to that in just a moment.
So, look, I understand what Joe, I endorse the guy, okay? I think his tone has been good, but I think they can do a much better job of reaching out to Republicans, and they better be careful about the spending they're doing, because we have not repealed the laws of gravity. So, Aaron, I wish him all the best. I'll help him however I can, but at the end of the day, I got to call them like I see them. They both have movement that has to be done in order to make progress down there. Thanks,
Governor.
Aaron. Thanks for letting me say this.
I appreciate your time. I appreciate.
So this is a guy who endorsed Joe Biden because Trump was divisive, and immediately he realizes that Joe Biden isn't going to do anything in terms of working with the Republicans unless he has to, and mostly he doesn't. And the media is just giving Joe Biden a free pass, social media. So unlike Trump, JoJo can do things that Trump couldn't. And that's spending what's going to come out to about $7 trillion in his first year of money we don't have. So this is from the New York Post before Biden too announced up to $4 trillion infrastructure plan with massive tax hikes. This is from the Wall Street Journal. Some Democrats cool to Biden's plan to boost corporate taxes. And what he wants to do is make corporate taxes go from 21% to 28%. He wants corporations to pay 7% more in taxes. Now, there's lots of people who hate corporations, and I'm not a big corporate fan, whatever it is, right? Everyone's like talks about evil corporations, and I do. I believe that corporations often are as evil or even more evil than governments. And so you have that. And people think, well, why not tax the crap out of them? They're always getting loopholes. Why shouldn't corporations pay taxes? And the simple answer is they will leave the country. And banks won't loan money for corporate development and things like this because there's a 7% tax increase, which is significant on the corporate level. And again, he's taxing rich people. And people are like, well, rich people, I mean, not real rich people, not the billionaires, not the trillionaires, right? Not the, people with real wealth. They're taxing people who are, the upper middle class. People making over $400,000 and things like this. And it's going to be maybe even lower than that. Where, people who are millionaires and they're making lots of money and the corporate executives are going to choose to live maybe in another country. They're going to restructure their corporate model so they don't have to pay these taxes. And they're going to take jobs and corporations out of the country. Again, it's going to decrease tax revenue because there's going to be less corporate development. And that's just how it works. Everyone knows this. This is why Democrats are against it. That, he needs to pay for this. The infrastructure plan is a good plan in the sense that our infrastructure is breaking down. This is, a known entity. It's really hard to rebuild civilizations. There is a bonding time period where, like for cement, for example, concrete, it starts to unbond. It's like glue, right? It starts to break apart. It's something that becomes solid. It binds together for 100 years or so, and then the bonds start to weaken. And you have all these cities, American cities, that were built, at a period of time, 100 years ago or so, and they're starting to fall apart. You have all these, bridges and things. And so American infrastructure, you look at cities like Venice and Italy and, all these ancient cities, and they just start falling apart. And it's far more expensive, and people just don't care about it. Like they don't, to build something new, people get excited about, but to repair old things, people are like, yeah, how much is that going to cost me in taxes? And there's just no money anymore. Back when there was the Depression, there's this place my family and I went to, Rocky Neck Park in Connecticut. And it was this beach about 2 hours from our home, and we used to go there all the time. I went back with like my kids maybe one time. And there was this giant, massive building. You can see it here. And it was like, almost like a castle. And my dad said this was built during the Depression. And so what happened was when there was a Depression, the government funded all these public works. And again, this was where the national debt first started. They did all these public works where they hired people to build infrastructure and things like national parks. And that's why you go to these old parks and there's these wonderful stone buildings. I mean, some of them are, beautiful. And they had all these people there trying to put back to work. And so the government went into debt to, fund all these things. And you go to, national parks and things like this, you'll see some of the results of these things. But now there's just too much debt for this. Like there's no, raising taxes isn't the solution. Again, our tax revenue is $3 trillion, $3.5 trillion here. This is going to, end at April 15th and it'll start over. And so this was what was generated from the 2020 tax year. It's going to be probably even less in 2021. And they want to raise this, but by raising corporate taxes and taxes on, because they're giving out handouts to people. They're going to, he says he's going to lower taxes for poor people. They're not going to change this very much. It's not going to be $1 trillion. If it's a little bit more, it's a little bit more. But they'll lose corporate investment, and so there'll be less money. And, what they have to do is keep up the appearance with economic growth that someday we'll be able to pay this off. That someday we'll be able to pay this off, $85 trillion, or pay these things. They got to make the illusion that we're growing economically. So someday we'll catch the rabbit. Someday the dog will catch the rabbit. The greyhound will catch the rabbit. They're supposed to make it look like someday this is, going to be worth something. These derivatives, the cash, the currency, printing of currency and derivatives. And so, it's an illusion. It's a confidence game. And by raising corporate taxes, it's not going to do that. It's going to make, less corporate development. People are going to try to make less money. They're going to try to stay below the tax rate, the $400,000 tax rate in some way or another, right? Everyone's going to, figure out a way to make less money. I mean, that's what these tax hikes do. They kill the economy. And so the infrastructure plan is good in theory because the infrastructure is breaking down. Everybody knows it. And it's a way to boost the economy, but how are you going to pay for it? And there's no way to pay for it, right? Just more debt. And nobody even talks about this anymore. The Republicans don't really even talk about national debt. Nobody really does because it's so, it's so out of whack. This is total federal, state, local spending. It's going up. This is $10 trillion. I mean, think about that. That's $10 trillion in spending. And this is the budget is $3 trillion. But there's, and this is the military spending, which is $724 billion, but this will be up at 1.6 or 7 trillion dollars at the end of it. They've already spent $1 trillion of Medicare and $1 trillion on Social Security, and this is the budget. The budget, they've already, with these three things, they've already spent the budget, and Biden's added another $4 trillion to the budget for, next year, and so this year. And so think about that. Like the numbers just don't add up. As an individual, as a person, you couldn't, as a family, you couldn't use these types of economic policies to, commit yourself to spending money that you've already, all your income has been accounted for. And you're going to double your spending on, on money that you don't have. No personal person would, no average, middle class person could do that. So Hunter Biden has written a tell-all book, and the New York Post loves crapping on this guy, but he is now admitted to being a crackhead. Like we had suspected him being a crackhead, but he dives into his crack addiction during his memoir. I guess he goes kind of tell-all, details how Hunter Biden's wife found out about his affair with Beau's wife, so his affair with his deceased brother's widow. So this was his wife, and then he starts cheating on her with his dead brother's wife, which is always a classy move. And then she found like a burner phone or an iPad. That's how she found out. Not important. Hunter Biden says he probably smoked Parmesan cheese while digging for crack in his carpets. This is a kind of interesting detail, but I think he's letting it all fly here. Hunter Biden opens up about his relationship with his brother's widow, Haley. I thought about this. I rethought about this. There was an earlier article where Haley Biden, his brother's widow, hid his handgun. She took his handgun, took a loaded handgun, and placed it on a top of an open garbage can across the street from a high school. She left a firearm that was loaded and dangerous, a killing machine, because guns are killing machines. Guns do one thing. They kill people. I mean, they're meant to kill people and things, right? They're killing machines. She left this killing machine, which, this guy is all about gun control, right? And she left this gun out in the open. Some homeless guy ended up picking it up. But it could have been any number of kids walking by a trash can. I mean, if you were a kid and you saw a handgun, I mean, you think you might pick it up and who knows, shoot it? Who knows what could have happened. And so, I mean, this is, a disaster waiting to happen, a horrible decision on her part. She took somebody else's handgun and she just, threw it out like loaded handgun, with all kinds of negative possibilities. And the Secret Service and the FBI swooped in because of protecting this guy and made it go away. But then it came back up, like there's investigative reporting, and now he's talking about his relationship with this woman. There was text emails on his computer, and emails that he talked about this, text messages he talked about it. And I read all those things. I covered this earlier. But think about how effed up and how irresponsible her act is. And if this was a normal person, they would be doing jail time, right? I mean, that one guy, Plaxico Burris, shot himself in the leg with a handgun in New York, and he served a couple of years in jail. I mean, that was him doing damage to himself. But imagine these in these Democratic places. She lives in Delaware, a Northeast Democratic state, and she did something incredibly irresponsible with a handgun. I mean, this is something that's you need to take responsibility and be safe with it. And she didn't receive even a slap on the wrist because they've been protecting this guy. I mean, think about all the things that Hunter Biden is admitting to here. Hunter Biden says he wasn't keeping tabs on his possessions when asked about his laptop. And basically what he said is it could be his laptop or it could be his laptop that was hacked by the Russians. Like those are his two, he knows it's his laptop. They would deny it's his laptop otherwise. And so think about all the things and ways that Joe Biden is protected, and he's being protected now. Because Hunter Biden, Bill Clinton had a idiot brother, and, George W. Bush was the idiot brother, and, you have all these people that have relatives that suck. The president has a relative that just isn't good, like a relative that's embarrassing. And Hunter Biden is the ultimate of this, and somebody who not only is embarrassing, but has engaged in shady behavior, as has Joe Biden's brother, and have leveraged their relationship with Joe Biden for money in a way that is a conflict of interest, not only for themselves, but for Joe Biden. And this guy, the media isn't covering it at all. Like this guy just admitted to being a crackhead and, all these things, and this laptop, which should have been controversial and should have been a deal breaker, should have taken down Joe Biden's campaign, all of it, because he was incriminated in it. And then there was a guy who was their business partner that testified or gave an interview with Tucker Carlson saying that Joe Biden was completely complicit in this stuff with China. And now the media isn't covering any of that when it's clearly something that would take down the Biden presidency. Okay, moving forward, Elizabeth Perkins says the love scene in Big wouldn't happen today. Yeah, because it was, pervy and, pedo. Big star Elizabeth Perkins doesn't have her fingers crossed that a memorable sexy scene of hers and Tom Hanks in the iconic film would survive a modern reboot. Tom Hanks played, like a 12-year-old in an adult body. All of a sudden he was made an adult, but internally he was 12. And, whatever you are internally is the real thing in modern culture. Of course, that your internal world is important. I mean, it's really important. I talk about in terms of spirituality and the heartfulness system, but not in the way that the modern culture is thinking about the internal world. The internal world of people who are some way, broken internally. But then she goes on to say, we don't see them having sex, but he does take his shirt off. Actually, I take my shirt off and he touches my breast. Then we cut to the elevator door opening, which is elevators go to hell, right? Staircases go to heaven, elevators go to hell. And he's got a big smile on his face. We never say, oh, they slept together, but they definitely fooled around. And so that would make her this criminal, right? I mean, she doesn't know it in the movie because he's in an adult body. So she doesn't know, like she's innocent of knowledge. She doesn't know he's a little kid in an adult body. But it is, the audience knows, right? And, it's pervy. Tom Hanks' son, Chet, is nothing like his nice guy dad. Chet, I've covered before, he got this Illuminati tattoo on his chest. And he perhaps responded to one of my videos. He was very upset. And he said he got the Illuminati tattoo because he was so spiritual. Remember, that stuff happened. And then he erased his Instagram account and he was going dark for a while. But then he came out and said it's a white boy summer, which made a lot of people upset. And then he videotaped his girlfriend hitting him with a pot, and he was bleeding. I didn't cover any of those things, but they happened. And now he's being hammered across the internet because he's kind of a dope. I'm just talking about it here because I've covered this before, and a lot of these things seem to be coming to a resolution. Chet films White Boy Summer movie amid abuse accusations.
White Boy Summer?
Yeah, it depends.
Well, I mean, what's the gist behind it?
No, actually, you can't.
Where you from, bro?
Huh?
Where you from?
From around. I can't ask. No, I mean it's a popular thing. I'm not trying to razz you for it. I just think it's a cool concept. So I'm just trying to ask if you can understand, if you can explain it for people who aren't going to understand it, right? That's all I'm asking.
He's good right now, bro.
I'm good right now.
Moving.
Okay.
We're just trying. Keep it moving, man.
All right.
Yeah, appreciate it.
No worries.
Yeah, he's kind of a dope. So we all know that. Sandra Lee and Andrew Cuomo split. Governor's cheating, an open secret, sources say. So they split because she knew he was just a cheater, which means probably everybody knew. This is the same thing with Biden and Hunter Biden, that when the media knows these things to be true and they work as a, like a publicity company, a publicist, and they bury, they scrub things they know about that the public should know about, and they present a brand, they give brand support to a politician like they did with Cuomo's and they're doing now with Biden, that's effed up, right? Like it's beyond being just a shill media organization. You're now into the area of full out propaganda, and our mainstream media has been there for a while. So this is CNN's Dana Bash can't repeat what GOP lawmakers are texting her about Matt Gaetz, whatever his name is. Here is the CNN piece about it.
This guy was so tight with President Trump, but it doesn't exactly seem like his Republican colleagues are rallying to his defense.
Not in the least. If you could see my text messages from some of his current and former colleagues, I actually can't repeat what some of them say on morning television.
Why can't we see them? Like people don't swear anymore. They don't swear on every possible network now. You can't repeat stuff like that. Like kids are hearing all this crap. Kids are watching some guy give the devil a lap dance, and you can't repeat what these Republican colleagues are saying. Like, why bring it up then? That's not news. Oh yeah, you should hear what I got some stuff I can't share with you, but it's really bad. That's not news. Like, you're an embarrassment. I mean, not just to news people, to the human race, right? Like, that's just the worst kind of manipulative journalism. Now, I dislike Matt Gaetz. I already talked about that early in this video. And I'll be glad when he goes because he's a creep. I'll be glad when all of them go, right? There's no politicians out there that I'm a fan of. But in terms of like the news coverage, you don't say things like that.
And it's because he has not made himself popular with most of his colleagues. And again, we're talking about his fellow Republicans, John. We're talking about...
Again, just unnamed sources and not even quotes. She has not even quotes from unnamed sources. She's saying Republican colleagues. Is it one person? Is it two persons? Are there any Republican colleagues that likes the guy? I mean, this is the worst type of, propaganda journalism. I mean, it's not journalism. It's not even shilling. It's propaganda, where they are, they come in with a preconceived idea of how they're going to cover a story, and they make the facts, their facts in air quotes fit their story. Like she's saying she has these tweets we'll never see from people that she won't name. They're really bad for this guy, but she won't give us any information other than that. And we're just supposed to trust, confirmed liars and shills. I mean, all these people on CNN that just lie all the time and manipulate their audience. It's irresponsible to your audience. It's not only bad journalism, but it's poor human behavior. Kevin Durant fined $50,000 for messages to Michael Rappaport.
He continues, though, to miss the point. Not just when it comes to his Twitter and social media engagement, which, all right, man, do you. But when it comes to some of the language that he used in a private direct message exchange with Michael Rappaport, which should have remained private, but nonetheless, Michael Rappaport released it.
That to me is the story. Michael Rappaport that said all kinds of offensive things out there. He had these tweets against Trump and was threatening in various ways and name-calling Trump, very hostile. I covered that before. He had a private exchange with Kevin Durant, who he used to be business partners with. He criticized Kevin Durant for an interview that he gave. Kevin Durant is somebody who's been very sensitive, and he's had burner accounts, got caught with burner accounts and things like this. And so he went after Michael Rappaport with all this, very hostile language, but it was private. And so Michael Rappaport unleashed this stuff, private messages, which is completely uncool. Again, I'm not defending what Kevin Durant said, but it was private. He didn't say these things publicly. All these celebrities, news people, and politicians are forced to go along with the status quo. Like, we all know that here in the truth community. We know that they're just pretending to believe these things. Many of them disagree with them in private, but in terms of their brand, they know what they have to say, and they say it. They go along with the status quo. But this was a case where two celebrities are having a private dispute, and one of them leaks it for no reason. Like, he didn't have to leak this, and that's being brushed away like it's not a complete scumbag move, right? Again, no matter what Kevin Durant says in these things, they are meant private and shouldn't be judged at the same level as something that he might have tweeted. Like when somebody tweets something and puts it out in the public, that's a complete different thing than a private message. And so again, he said things that are going to be considered offensive, and, everyone's offended. Now everything's offensive, right? Nobody really cares that he said these things in a private message. Nobody cares. But it just exposes what he really believes inside. He'll say certain things in public, just like all of these various celebrities, politicians, and news people. They have their public persona, and they have this, they have what they really believe. And that this is a clear demonstration of that, right? And so this video kind of took me all day, and I almost erased the whole thing by accident. And, it was, I had a kind of a neat experience, a profound experience I'll share tomorrow about what happened after we did the prayer tonight. I had kept putting things in my toolbar for whenever I felt good enough to make a video. And, they just built up after a period of days, and just how overwhelming. Like, I'm more sensitive now to it. I was all right in the beginning, but as it, this video dragged on, I was just, overwhelmed by just the scumbaggery of all of it. And, I was thinking about this. There are a couple of fundamental problems here. Fundamental problems of our human civilization and our social system. And the first one is that to achieve success or monetary gain, or to gain power in business and personal relationships, the ends justify the means. And really think about that, because it's a true statement. At least as far as I can tell. I don't think it can be disputed. That somewhere along the line, all of us are told and we learn, and some people, the sociopathic people, take it to a whole different level, that to achieve something, your goal, your whatever it might be, in one way or another, it's okay to lie and cheat and steal and misrepresent things and completely fabricate things and make up alternative realities and whatever you got to do. Winning isn't everything. It's the only thing. This is the competitive nature of our culture and our world. And so people all have different levels of this, where they'll do things that aren't cool, they know aren't cool, to achieve something, right? To achieve a goal, to get something that they want. And it's gotten so out of control. Like, all this stuff I'm showing you here is all about agendas, right? It's all about pushing different agendas and people lying and misrepresenting themselves and being one way on the inside. This is part of what I've talked about with the heartfulness system, is to have your insides and your outsides to be the same. That what you have on the inside is manifested on the outside. And so that you're honest with what you are. You're not putting on an act and a mask and, a brand in front of people. And we're so far away from that. Like, people don't know what your true intentions are. People will give you advice about something and you later find out it benefited them. Like, they were selling you something that would help them out. And it could be a loved one or whatever it might be, any number of people. People pushing their agendas and pushing their reality on other people. And now it's just such a mess, such an absolute mess. The other piece to this is the people who control the system, the people I call the controllers, their goals and desires and orientation to the world is not what yours is. They don't have the same values and the same, intentions and things. But they are good at selling their agenda and making it seem like it's what benefits you. They're able to work their agenda through narratives and storylines that appeal to the masses. Like for the Libyan war, for example. The reason that the Libya war, there was a war in Libya, was to loot Libya and to take Gaddafi down, get rid of his gold dinar, assure the petrodollar, and keep everything status quo. The way they sold it to everybody, like they sold the Iraq war, is that there were these people being tortured there, and we had to intervene some way to save people because we're the heroes and he's the bad guy, right? And this is what you see across the board. They're demonizing people. They make up narratives and stories about them so they can justify their actions in ways that are palatable to the masses. And so if you think about just those two things, at the level of deception and self-deception and the rules of engagement, because it's more important to be successful and win and have a killer instinct, and that's something we're all told and trained in, in terms of being a liar and a cheater and a manipulator is okay as long as you win and you don't get caught doing those things. That's the other piece. It's okay to do those things as long as you don't get caught, that you're able to maintain your illusion and your brand throughout the deception. And that's how just messed up we are. This is just another way that the system coming down is essential to somehow, redeeming the human race. Anyways, my voice is going a little bit here and my energy's low. I have more to say about this, but I'll, finish it in a video maybe in a couple days. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely reporting from the Apocalaughs and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.